How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am back for another comic book video. Before I get started, I'd like to thank everybody who has been subscribing and watching my videos and hitting that like button. It's always a nice feeling. And if you have anybody who's interested in this kind of material, go ahead and share the video or steer them to this channel. I know it's got kind of a weird name, but I've kind of grown used to it over the years. Before I get started with this review, I would like to say that in a lot of my early Golden Age videos, my spotlights and some of my reviews, countdowns, I did not review the first issue of these heroes. I did not have the research material at the time to be able to do the first issues like I have been doing with the Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. So if there is any of the heroes that I've reviewed in the past that I didn't do the first issue of that you would like to see the first issue for, you can leave me a comment in the comment section, and I could do like short video reviews where I cover the first issue. That's only if you're interested in that, though. It's kind of a feature that I've been enjoying, so you can kind of see what the comic book is about, maybe. I mean, sometimes the formats change. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with this video.
Just who exactly is Granny Gumshoe?
I don't quite know how to answer the question. I mean, I got a review about her.
Why are we doing this one?
This is a request video.
Of course it was.
And I really don't have a lot to say about Granny Gumshoe. There's no origin story. There's no specific end. There's no arch villains. She's more of a detective. After the popularity of superheroes started to trail off, the detective and crime stories started to gain a bit more popularity. And National Comics, which is what Granny Gumshoe was in, had this feature story was a circus thing, but the rest of them seemed to be crime and detective stories. Now, Granny Gumshoe seemed to be a little popular, never popular enough for the featured story or the featured cover, and she ended before the last 5 issues of National Comic Book, where they kind of changed their format, shortened their pages, and got rid of some of their more prominent stories, and went with less stuff. Now, whether this was an issue of whether they wanted to make smaller comics or whether they were getting ready to go out of business, because we know that Quality would eventually close their doors and DC would pick up a number of their characters, I really don't know if that was a thing, because Quality had a lot of titles. So let's go ahead and cover Granny Gumshoe. Like I said, there's not a lot that I can say about her in the intro. I've covered the first issue and got a rundown of what the comic book is. So,
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
Let's do this. Granny Gumshoe, real name. Well, she doesn't seem to have a first name, but her last name is Gumshoe. First appeared in National Comics number 57, 1946. The publisher is Quality, and she was created by Gil Fox, which I believe I've mentioned before. Now, Granny Gumshoe was an interesting feature. I think it gained some slight popularity because by the time she came to the end of her run, she was usually either the second or the third feature, where she started much later in the back of the comic books first. Now, she's a detective, but not your normal detective. She seems like where most other detectives are dealing with crime stories where they're straight crime, you solve the story. Her story seemed to tailor a little differently and slightly comedic. They ranged between her taking down criminals who were either using scientific genius to solve crimes or it was supernatural in nature. Now, I'm going to put up a number of pictures from the issues here, whether she was dealing with an anthropomorphic doll, stone golems that were set up for boxing, or whether she was dealing with a guy who was able to absorb the third rail of a train. I'm not even going to question how he was able to absorb the energy instead of it flying him, or this guy creating flying saucers. There is no origin story, and there's no classic ending either. When her last appearance in number 70, National Comics redid their formats. The comics were a lot smaller. They brought over some of their features, which would last until number 75. Apparently, retooling their comics didn't go over very well. So, when they would redo the feature, Granny Gumshoe would not transfer over to that, and she would end in after 14 issues. Now, she had a granddaughter called Lippy Lou. I don't think we ever see her parents, because she lives at Granny's house. She's not in all of the issues, and Granny seems to be a bit of an inventor. And I'm going to show some of the inventions right here, where you see that she's got an umbrella made out of rubber to absorb the lightning bolts of the guy who absorbed electricity. She has a glue gun, which she's actually used more than once. And on one occasion, when she was dealing with a guy who could miniaturize people and things to try and steal from the house, she made miniaturized clockwork versions of herself to throw off the guy. So I really don't have much to say about her overall. 14 issues. I don't believe that she went on to anything after the Golden Age. I mean, with quality, I know DC acquired a lot of quality. I don't think that they got her too. I believe she's in the public domain, but I think this is the only place where she existed. Right here in the Golden Age, I don't think she's had any resurrections. I don't think that anybody has any plans on it anytime soon. She seemed rather Batman-esque, with how she was always able to get the right tool for the criminal she was dealing with, or being able to invent what she needed to deal with whoever she had to go up against. So this is Granny Gumshoe. An odd footnote, kind of humorous, and this is how far we can go with it. We'll go ahead and cover the first issue so you can get an idea of the stories, and there you go. Granny Gumshoe, and it looks like she has chased a terrible poor little man up a tree. Somewhere in the suburbs of Weston lives a lovable old lady. Doesn't look so lovable in that scene. No one would have believed that this quaint person has a secret passion for criminal investigation and invention. These hobbies come in handy when Granny Gumshoe got involved in a strange adventure. It all started when her granddaughter Lippy Lou called Granny at the top of her lungs, because she's a kid. So she comes downstairs with the newspaper and talking about how there's this master ventriloquist in the theater and she wants to go see it. Granny reads the paper and notices that that's Harmon Echo. He carved that dummy out of the big broth that fell from the old hickory tree in front of this house 25 years ago. He used to be our neighbor. So she's intrigued that it used to be their next door neighbor and they're going to go see them. Now we come to the ventriloquist and what looks like the dummy, which also looks like the character she traced up a tree, and he seems to be having some sort of existential crisis. And I love how there's a cigarette in the side of his mouth that keeps going from one side to the other. He's talking about how the dummy started to talk. I think he might be doubting himself on what is really happening. And one of the things he says here, I hadn't thrown my voice from the dummy at all when it opened its mouth and said, tonight's revenge. And he doesn't think it's actually happening. So we get to the next couple of panels, and Granny and Lippy are in the audience, and she seems to be doing the wave for some reason. He starts off his act, and then the dummy starts taking on a mind of its own. Yeah, Professor, they're not going to believe what they're about to see. And there's no explanation for this, but the dummy says, I've waited silently 24 years to come to life while you got all the glory. You were acclaimed as the greatest ventriloquist. Well, you're finished thinking of me because now I'm alive. And he walks off stage, and I'm not sure if the people believe it is part of the act or not, but there's no explanation. The dummy just comes to life. Okay. I mean, when you have other BS happening in the Golden Age, at least they have some sort of a vague explanation to it. There's none at all. This guy just comes to life. As they're watching it, Granny says, I think there's something queer happening. Oh, you can't say that. Happening under our very noses, child. So she hears a couple of the ushers talking about the dummy didn't walk this afternoon. So she goes to investigate what's going on. She tries to stop the ventriloquist from opening the door, and the dummy pops out and hits the ventriloquist hard enough that it breaks his neck. Let's see. Granny says, poor old Hiram, the blow from the splinter's hickory fist broke his neck. There goes the little rascal out the window. And then she sees this business card that was laying around. Oh yeah, always leave clues to where you're going to next. And it talks about, it's a manufacturer that makes dummies. So he goes over there and he's telling the owner of the company that he wants a female dummy made as his partner because he's going to venture off on his own. The guy thinks that this is a big gag and starts to laugh, and Splinter threatens him. Right then, we notice that Granny is somehow above them and finds this gigantic air vent. And she says, I invented the queerest thing. Will you stop talking like that? You can't say things like that. The spray gun built into my umbrella. So she tries to glue Splinter so he can't move anymore. Liquid cement. Well, he ditches his arm, which is glued. And he also ditches his jacket. And he says, let's see. Not quite my desperate friend, or she says that she's trapped. He goes, not quite my desperate friend. Next time you try to trap me, make sure there are no spare limbs around and no banisters to slide down. And he sees Granny as he's sliding away. The next day, Granny plan to capture Splinter is well underway. Lippy burst into the room and said that she's gotten the insects from the deserted house on the corner. I wouldn't think that a town like that would have a deserted house. And Granny has a fake ad in the paper. Well, it got there rather fast. Talking about how someone is selling a pretty dummy girl. I would normally ridicule an ad like that, but we all know what it was for. Okay, so Splinter says that's exactly what he's looking for. Why would he just start reading the newspaper for something like that? You know what? Never mind. So he goes to the address and he opens the door and there's Granny. And he's like, why, you old bag, and shoots him. There is a hole in the head and he talks about how he always keeps, let's see, I'm always prepared for chips, scratches, and bullet holes in my surface. And he plugs up the hole and says, now what are you going to do? I'll hit you with my hickory fist. And she says, not while I hold these tube of wood termites. Now, he is very frightened of the wood termites. He runs out of the building and runs up a tree. Please don't come near me with those wood termites, and tells Lippy to get the axe. She cuts down the tree, and the dummy falls to the ground dead. Lippy says, I'm going to read this panel. That's funny, Granny. Nothing could kill him, yet when the tree fell, he died. That's obvious, child. You see, this is the hickory tree from which Splinter's body was carved. When it died, he died too. How in God's name is that obvious? I mean, the dummy shouldn't even be alive. How is it obvious that killing is the tree that he came from killing him? Wasn't the tree branch that fell from the dead tree already dead at that point? None of this makes any sense. Of course, the dummy's alive. It doesn't make any sense at all. Obviously, there's nothing obvious about that. If I'm trying to kill a ventriloquist dummy that happens to be running down the street trying to make a life of its own, I'm not going to think that cutting down the tree that it came from is the way to stop him. I'd probably try and throw him in a wood chipper. Okay. Next we see the big guy, or this big guy is captain of Homicide Squad, Granny. He comes in and he says he doesn't believe the story about the dummy and wants to know where it is. And we see that Granny has turned him into a lamp. There he is. I was working on a lamp when I captured him. I thought he'd make a unique little base for it. Now, as what was starting to get common with the Golden Age comics, it doesn't say the end. It just abruptly ends. But this is a little bit more of an obvious ending than some of the comic books that just end without saying anything. And interestingly enough, she appears in more issues, but it doesn't say that she will appear in more issues. It just comes to an end. And that's the first issue. Well, I hope you like this hero. I hope you like this story. Sorry if the sound of the air conditioner is messing with the audio quality. I wasn't going to turn it off. The heat wave is it's just better to keep the air conditioner on with the heat wave going on right now. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this story. Go ahead and send me some more of your reviews, or if you're interested in seeing the first issue of heroes that I previously covered, little short videos covering the first issues wouldn't be too bothersome. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.